Before we dive into this thrilling story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss out on our latest uploads. Your support keeps us going. Now, let's get into it. Don't you want to try the coffee I made especially for you, honey? James's voice was gentle, his smile even gentler, but there was something behind it, something Christina couldn't quite place. A flicker too rehearsed. A calm too calculated. She looked down at the coffee cup. The steam rose lazily, but it carried a scent that didn't belong. Bitter sharp, with a metallic edge that made her stomach twist. Around her, the elegant dining room of her sister-in-law Nina's home buzzed with polite chatter. Nina always hosted their monthly family brunch with flair, but Christina barely heard any of it. Her heartbeat had begun to thud in her ears. Her fingers hovered just above the porcelain cup. Something wasn't right. My husband James has become quite the barista lately. Nina chimed in from across the table, stirring her own untouched cup. Her smile didn't reach her eyes either. He's been experimenting with different brewing methods. All for you. The way she emphasized those last 3 words made Christina's skin crawl. It wasn't just the coffee. It was everything. James's sudden interest in coffee, his frequent visits to Nina's house, the secretive glances, the muffled laughter behind closed doors. And the hospital visits. God, the hospital visits. 3 times in 6 months, Christina had been rushed in for food poisoning. Once after tea at Nina's. Once after breakfast James insisted on cooking. Once after a seemingly harmless dinner. The symptoms never quite made sense to the doctors: nausea, dizziness, violent tremors. But now, staring into that cup, the dots began connecting. She forced a smile. How thoughtful of you, she said, voice flat. Go ahead, drink it while it's hot, James urged, nudging the cup closer. Christina lifted it slowly, buying time, pretending to inhale the aroma. Her hands didn't shake, but her mind was racing. In the reflection on the polished silver spoon, she caught them, James and Nina exchanging a glance. Subtle, but there. Calculated. Anticipatory. She set the cup down. Oh shoot, she said suddenly, glancing at her phone. Work call. Nina, mind if I step into your study? Of course, Nina said, her voice sweet as syrup. Christina stood. As she passed Nina's chair, she deliberately stumbled, grabbing the back of it for support, and in one motion switched their cups. Oops, sorry, she gasped. Nina waved her off. Don't break anything. Christina smiled faintly, heart hammering. She slipped into the study, just far enough to watch through the doorway. Nina picked up the coffee cup, the one Christina had been handed, and took a slow, confident sip. Then a second. Then her hand began to shake. James? Nina's voice wavered. Her face drained of color. Something's wrong. Christina didn't move. She hit record on her phone. James stood up so fast his chair clattered to the floor. Nina, wait! No, that wasn't supposed to be your... Too late. Nina clutched the edge of the table. Her body trembled. Her voice cracked. James, she gasped. What did you put in that coffee? And Christina stepped forward. Calm. Steady. Recording every word. 3 years ago, if someone had told Christina that she'd be standing in a study, secretly recording her husband and sister-in-law as their carefully orchestrated plan to poison her unraveled in real time, she would have laughed it off as absurd. But now, as she stood gripping the phone, steady as stone while Nina writhed in visible distress and James's mask of calm slipped into raw panic, the past 3 years replayed like a twisted highlight reel. It hadn't started this way. When she first met James at a mutual friend's wedding in Nashville, he was charming in a quiet, thoughtful kind of way. Not the loudest in the room, but the one who always noticed when someone's glass was empty or their chair wobbled. He paid attention, and in a world of shallow connections, that had swept her off her feet. Nina, his older sister, had been equally welcoming, too welcoming, even. Christina had found it odd that someone so polished, successful, and fiercely independent would take such an interest in her future sister-in-law, but she chalked it up to familial warmth. Their wedding was beautiful, intimate, and curated with Nina's impeccable taste. She had insisted on helping plan every detail, from the venue to the floral arrangements, claiming she wanted only the best for her baby brother's big day. At the time, Christina had been touched. Now, looking back, she could see the cracks. The way Nina had raised a brow when Christina chose an ivory gown instead of stark white. The way her makeup had inexplicably vanished moments before the ceremony, causing Christina to scramble and borrow a backup kit. The way James had defended every one of those accidents, with a gentle chuckle and a kiss on the forehead. That's just Nina being Nina, he'd say. She means well. But the real shift had come after Christina landed her job at Crestwood Marketing, a prestigious firm known for its high-profile clientele. She'd started as an account manager but quickly rose through the ranks, her pitches sharp, her strategy unflinching. Within a year, she was outshining veterans, earning praise from the firm's biggest clients. One of those clients, Henderson and Company, a billion-dollar conglomerate with global reach, had requested Christina personally lead their rebranding campaign, a deal worth millions. That was when the subtle sabotage began. At first, it was minor. Nina would insist on hosting a family dinner the night before Christina's big presentations, and the next morning, Christina would wake up with severe nausea. James would fuss over her, bringing her toast and ginger tea, insisting she stay home and rest. "Your health comes first," he'd whisper. "There'll be other meetings." But there were always other meetings. And Nina was always there. Christina began to notice the pattern. The timing was too precise to be coincidental. One brunch left her hospitalized for dehydration after vomiting all night. Another dinner led to dizzy spells that nearly caused a car accident on her way to a pitch. Each time, James had an excuse ready. "Maybe it's that new supplement you started. You've been working too hard. Could it be stress?" But what finally pushed Christina past suspicion into certainty was an offhand comment she overheard while walking past their home office late one night. "I just need her out of the picture for a few days," Nina had whispered, her voice barely audible. "That Henderson account should have been mine. She can't just waltz in and take everything." "I know," James had replied. "But it has to look natural. Just enough to keep her down, not knock her out permanently." Christina had stood frozen in the hallway, her breath caught in her throat. She had walked away before they could notice her. That night she began keeping records, dates, meals, symptoms. She bought a backup phone with a separate number and started recording conversations, even if they seemed mundane. If her own husband and sister-in-law were conspiring against her, she needed more than suspicion. She needed proof. And so, she played the part. The loving wife. The grateful sister-in-law. She accepted their invitations, smiled through their backhanded compliments, and quietly gathered evidence. Every accidental spill Nina caused on her designer outfits. Every time James forgot to mention key details that would have helped her pitch. Every time she felt dizzy after a meal. Christina chronicled it all. She even switched cups or plates during meals to see if her symptoms changed. And they did. She had enough now to fill a folder, and her instincts told her it was building towards something bigger. When James began spending more time at Nina's house under the guise of planning a surprise for their anniversary, her stomach twisted. Surprises weren't their thing. They never had been. The final straw came 2 weeks ago when she found a small glass vial in James's desk drawer. It had no label, just a faint chemical smell and residue clinging to the bottom. She photographed it, noted the time and date, and left it exactly where she found it. The next morning, it was gone. That weekend, James offered to cook breakfast. Christina pretended to oversleep and later found her plate already served and waiting, steaming on the table. She took one bite and faked a phone call, spitting the food into a napkin and flushing it in the bathroom. Later, she spent an hour watching James's reflection in the oven door as he peered at her with something like hope, or anticipation. That led to today's brunch. Now, watching Nina tremble as the poison took hold, Christina felt no satisfaction, only a grim, chilling confirmation that everything she'd feared was true. Her suspicions weren't paranoia. Her instincts had screamed, and this time, she'd listened. When the paramedics arrived, she played the part of the concerned family member with grace. But once Nina was in the ambulance, Christina stepped outside and called her lawyer. "Check your inbox," she said calmly. "I've sent the video. Time-stamped. Voice recorded. I want everything documented." Her lawyer, Amelia Shaw, didn't ask unnecessary questions. "I'll get the ball rolling," she said. "Start with a hospital toxicology report. If this confirms what you say, we have a solid case." At the hospital, Christina remained close but kept her distance. James paced the hallway, rubbing his hands together, eyes flickering toward the ER doors every few seconds. When the doctor emerged with a grave expression, James rushed forward. "Is she okay?" "We stabilized her," the doctor said, then turned to Christina. "Mrs. Bennett, I'd like to speak with you privately." In the consultation room, Christina played the recording again, her phone's speaker quiet but clear. The doctor's face hardened as she listened. "That substance we found, it's not something found in food or medicine. It's synthetic, used in pharmaceutical research trials." Christina nodded slowly. "Then it's deliberate. We'll run additional tests, but from what I've seen, if you'd consumed that coffee..." She didn't finish. Later, Christina confronted James outside Nina's room. He looked pale, sweat beading at his temples. "Christina, I know what this looks like." "You do?" she asked, her voice like ice. He faltered. Nina was obsessed with that account. She said if you just take a step back, even for a week. You poisoned me, James. No. It wasn't poison, it was just something to keep you tired. Off your game. You think that sounds better? She said, her voice rising despite herself. He reached out, but she stepped back. Security appeared, alerted by the doctor. Christina showed them the text she had forwarded from James's phone, plans to neutralize her before major meetings, mentions of upping the dosage. Even a message from Nina. She's too sharp. You need to be smarter. The police arrived later that night. Christina watched as they searched James's office at Anderson Marketing. They found what she feared they would: multiple vials, chemical compounds, and a black notebook, handwritten logs detailing her reactions, dates of trials, and notes like mild nausea and ineffective. It was a medical journal of calculated sabotage. When she returned to the hospital, Nina was conscious. Her usual cold stare was replaced by something else, fear. Christina stepped into the room. You switched the cups, Nina rasped. Christina said nothing. I could have died. You were willing to let me die. I just wanted the deal. You don't know what it's like, building a career only to have it stolen by some newcomer. I didn't steal anything. Christina interrupted. I earned it. Everything I've done was built on work. You and James tried to erase that. Nina's eyes welled with tears, whether from pain or guilt, Christina couldn't tell. It didn't matter. The evidence was ironclad. And for the first time in months, Christina felt like she could breathe. The morning after Nina's hospitalization, Christina sat in her living room surrounded by a fortress of manila folders, USB drives, voice recorders, and legal pads scribbled with every suspicious incident, every poison moment turned into a time-stamped weapon. It was all there: the digital messages from James's phone, the recordings from brunch, her own private medical records documenting months of unexplainable illness, even the receipt she'd found last week in their trash, an online order from a pharmaceutical supplier, paid with James's work card. She wasn't just fighting for justice anymore. She was preparing for war. Amelia, her lawyer, arrived precisely at 9 a.m., her expression unreadable but her briefcase heavy with anticipation. The DA is interested, she said as she dropped a stack of papers onto Christina's table. We have a unique angle here: corporate sabotage, conspiracy, and attempted murder. They'll take it seriously, but we need to hit hard and hit fast before James or Nina can spin it. Christina's jaw clenched. Let them try. While Amelia drafted the formal complaint, Christina went through her backup phone, selecting the recordings that offered the most damning insight. There was one, captured late one night, where James muttered, "We just need to make her miss the Henderson pitch. That's all." A few days of nausea. Nothing fatal. Nina's response still chilled her. "Next time, let me dose it. You're too soft." Christina had listened to that recording at least 20 times. Each time, her blood boiled a little more. By afternoon, Detective Mendoza arrived at their home. She had a reputation: tough, methodical, and ruthless when it came to domestic abuse cases. Christina appreciated her quiet intensity, the way she listened without interrupting, the way her pen never stopped moving. When Christina played the brunch recording again, Mendoza's eyes darkened. "We'll need warrants for both their homes and offices," she said. "And a toxicology comparison between your previous hospitalizations and what we found in Nina's system." Christina nodded. "Whatever you need. I want this airtight." As investigators moved swiftly, Christina maintained her composure. She returned to the hospital to ensure Nina's condition was stable, not out of guilt, but necessity. The truth had to be told, and Nina was a crucial piece. She arrived to find security posted at both doors and a nurse who greeted her with solemn recognition. "Dr. Phillips would like to speak with you again," the nurse said. Inside the doctor's office, Christina was presented with a new toxicology report. "The compound in Nina's blood," Dr. Phillips began, "matches a synthetic neurotoxin used in pharmaceutical testing. Rare. Controlled. But not impossible to get, especially for someone like James who's connected to biotech." Christina's eyes narrowed. "Can it be traced?" "We believe so. We're contacting the supplier now." Just then, the door opened. 2 detectives walked in with evidence bags, a collection of vials, dosage notes, and clinical research printouts, all recovered from James's office at Anderson Marketing. It was worse than Christina imagined. Dosage logs included comments like, "Not strong enough. She still made the pitch," and "Try double dose before Henderson meeting." She felt her stomach turn. "They were testing me like a lab rat," she said bitterly. Later that evening, James attempted to contact her. He called twice. She didn't answer. He texted, "Please. We need to talk. I can explain everything." Then a second message. It was never supposed to go this far. I was just trying to protect you. Christina stared at the screen before typing a single reply. Tell it to your lawyer. The next morning, James was served with a restraining order, and both he and Nina were formally charged with conspiracy, attempted poisoning, and reckless endangerment. The news hit the local press within hours. Christina watched the coverage from her office. Her face wasn't in the articles, but the story made waves. Top executives under fire in alleged poisoning plot. Coworkers stared, whispered, speculated. But Christina walked through the hall with her head high. Henderson and Company called that afternoon. If you're still available, the executive said over the phone, we'd like you to take full creative lead. She smiled. I never wasn't. Meanwhile, the legal storm escalated. Nina's attorney tried to argue stress-induced delusion, that her confession at brunch was unreliable due to the toxins in her system. But the timeline was too tight, the audio too clear. James's defense was equally pathetic. He claimed he was manipulated by his sister, that he didn't know what was in the vials. But investigators had already matched his handwriting to the dosage logs. Christina attended every pre-trial hearing. She never missed a moment. In one particularly charged moment outside the courthouse, James approached her. Security hovered nearby, but he held up his hands empty. Christina, please. I was lost. Nina convinced me you were trying to ruin her career. She said you were playing us against each other. Christina's face was stone. You stood at our wedding and promised to protect me. And then you slowly, methodically tried to destroy me. I didn't mean for it to go that far. You kept increasing the dose. You knew I was getting worse. And you didn't stop. He broke then, right there on the courthouse steps. I just wanted you to slow down. You were becoming bigger than me. Smarter. More powerful. And it scared me. She stared at him for a long moment. Then you should have worked harder, not tried to kill me. The cameras caught everything. In the days that followed, Christina submitted every recording, every document, every hospital report. She cooperated with police, answered endless questions, revisited her trauma over and over until the timeline became bulletproof. A forensic specialist recreated the sequence of her poisonings, aligning symptoms with toxicology reports. Her story became not just credible, but impossible to ignore. A jury would have no doubt. Then came the moment she'd waited for, a formal deposition with the district attorney's office. Seated across from the prosecutor, a woman named Harris with razor-sharp instincts, and no tolerance for theatrics, Christina laid out everything. They didn't just want me out of the Henderson deal, she said. They wanted to erode my credibility. To make me seem unstable, unreliable. They wanted clients to lose faith in me. Slowly. Quietly. Without blood. And you believe they were escalating towards something fatal? Christina didn't hesitate. Yes. They miscalculated the dose with Nina, but that tells me they were confident. If I'd drunk that coffee, I wouldn't be sitting here. Harris tapped her pen against the desk. We're charging them with attempted murder. Christina exhaled deeply, a release she hadn't known she was holding. 2 days later, Nina's plea deal fell apart when the lab report confirmed the substance in Christina's bloodstream from her March hospitalization was the same compound found in the coffee. James tried to claim ignorance again, but the supplier confirmed the order had come from his office IP address. And the kicker? Security footage from Anderson Marketing showed James signing for the package personally. When trial dates were set, Christina braced herself for the circus. And it was a circus. Reporters swarmed the courthouse. Former clients weighed in on social media. Some accused her of exaggeration, of seeking attention. But others rallied behind her. Women from rival firms reached out in private messages, sharing their own stories of sabotage, of jealous peers, of threats masked as concern. Through it all, Christina remained poised. She hired a media consultant who advised her on how to speak, how to sit, how to let her voice be heard without ever seeming vindictive. You're not out for revenge, the consultant said. You're showing the cost of staying silent too long. Christina nodded. I'm showing them who they underestimated. On the first day of trial, Christina took the stand. The courtroom was packed. She wore a navy suit, simple makeup, and spoke with a calm that unnerved even the defense. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She simply told the truth. I sat in emergency rooms with no answers, while the people who claimed to love me were documenting my pain like data points. I trusted them. I broke bread with them. And they poisoned me, because I was good at my job. She showed them the notes, the vials, the audio. She played the brunch recording in court. When Nina's voice crackled through the speakers, you said it would just make her sick enough to miss the board meeting. The jury collectively shifted. It was over. When she stepped down from the stand, Christina didn't look at James. Didn't look at Nina. She looked straight ahead, her back straight, her chin high. And for the first time in months she smiled, not from victory, but from survival. The courtroom was still when the judge returned with the sentence, his gavel poised in midair like a symbol of inevitable consequence. Christina sat in the front row, her hands folded, her body as composed as it had been every day of the 3-week trial. The room was filled with media, family, former colleagues, and a sea of strangers now invested in the story of the poised marketing executive who'd stood toe-to-toe with betrayal and turned poison into power. James and Nina were seated at the defense table, both stripped of the air of control they had once carried so effortlessly. Nina looked worn down, her hair unkempt, her signature blazer now wrinkled like her resolve. James looked hollow, the same man who once stood beside Christina with promises of forever now staring at the floor like a child caught in the act. When the sentence was read, 15 years for attempted murder, conspiracy, and tampering with evidence, Christina didn't smile. She didn't flinch. She only exhaled. A long, slow, almost silent breath that marked the end of a war she never asked for. James barely looked up. Nina whimpered, hiding her face in her trembling hands. But Christina never looked away. She watched them as they were led away in cuffs, not with malice, not even satisfaction, but with a steady recognition of truth. This was justice. This was the cost of their choices. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed like wasps. Questions flew. How did it feel? What would she do next? Was she planning to sue? Write a book? Christina gave a single statement, rehearsed and simple. Sometimes, the most dangerous threats wear familiar faces. But truth, when protected and documented, becomes its own form of armor. I'm grateful to be alive. I'm ready to move forward. And she did. In the weeks that followed, Christina returned to work at Crestwood Marketing with more offers than she could handle. The Henderson account, now global and expanding into 3 continents, credited her steady leadership with the successful rebrand. 2 more major corporations reached out, requesting her as their direct point of contact. Her company offered her a partnership deal. But the real surprise came during a quiet Friday morning, when an envelope slid across her desk from the CEO, a full buy-in offer and controlling interest in a new firm, her firm. The name was her choice. She chose Bennett Strategy Group. The first meeting in her new office was with a team of young account managers, mostly women, all of them hungry, sharp, and still a little unsure of themselves. Christina stood at the head of the table, confident but warm. "You're going to make mistakes," she told them. "You're going to doubt yourselves. People will underestimate you. Let them. But when you walk into a room, walk like you own it. And never, ever, let anyone make you feel like your brilliance is a threat to be dimmed." They listened like it was gospel. Outside of work, Christina took her time rebuilding her personal life. She sold the house she'd shared with James. It was too large, too quiet, too haunted by the phantom of smiles that once meant safety and later meant danger. She moved into a high-rise apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows and a clear view of downtown Nashville. She repainted every wall. Got a dog. Stopped setting a second place at the dinner table. Her therapist told her she was displaying signs of post-traumatic growth, a resilience that forms not despite the trauma, but because of it. And then came the keynote. The Nashville Business Leaders Conference had been an annual event Christina admired from afar for years. She'd attended once as a junior associate, tucked into the back row with a notepad and borrowed confidence. Now she stood behind the podium, the room buzzing with anticipation. She wore a crimson suit, crisp and bold, and as she stepped into the spotlight she scanned the crowd. Familiar faces. Curious strangers. Silent skeptics. All of them waiting to hear what she had to say. "Success," she began, "is not just about talent or timing. It's about resilience. About staying upright when the people you love try to knock you down, quietly, systematically, and with a smile." The room was still. Some of the biggest threats to your career, to your identity, will not come from the outside. They'll come from your kitchen table. From your shared bank account. From the people who say they're on your team. She paused. "I learned the hard way that instincts are not just noise. They're warnings. And if you listen closely enough, they might just save your life." The crowd erupted in applause. People stood. Some cheered. Others cried. After the speech, a woman no older than 25 approached her backstage. She had wide eyes and a nervous grip on her leather portfolio. "How did you stay calm?" she asked. "How did you keep going when everything was falling apart?" Christina smiled gently. "I focused on what I could control. I gathered proof. I trusted the parts of me that doubted the story I was being fed. And I kept moving, even when it hurt." That night, Christina returned home to an inbox full of congratulations and a final email from the Henderson client, a 3-year contract extension, with bonuses tied to their next international campaign. The email's subject line simply read, "We trust you." She closed her laptop and walked out to the balcony, letting the breeze wash over her. Below, the city pulsed with life. Horns, lights, movement. She sipped a glass of wine, her phone silent beside her. No more strange messages. No more being watched. Just quiet. A news alert popped up later that week. Local executives begin prison terms for attempted poisoning scheme. She didn't read the article. She didn't need to. The past was behind her, and the future, hers, was untouchable. In a small journal she kept by her nightstand, Christina wrote 3 words: I outlived it. The notebook had once been her survival log. Now, it was her freedom log. She turned the page, drew a line, and began to plan her next pitch. There are certain moments in life when everything you thought was safe suddenly reveals itself to be dangerous. For Christina, it wasn't the betrayal itself that hurt the most. It was the realization that the hands once held in love were the same ones mixing the poison. Her story isn't just one of crime and punishment, of courtroom victories and media attention. It is, at its core, a brutal, sobering, and powerful life lesson about the dangers of misplaced trust, the strength that comes from paying attention to your own intuition, and the quiet, relentless courage it takes to keep standing when the people closest to you are determined to see you fall. The first lesson that screams through Christina's story is this: just because someone loves you doesn't mean they want what's best for you. Love is not always protection. Sometimes it's possession. Sometimes it is conditional, transactional, jealous, or deeply threatened by your light. James said he loved Christina, but what he really loved was the version of her that needed him, that stayed in his shadow, that didn't outshine his career or claim the spotlight he thought he deserved. The moment her trajectory eclipsed his affection twisted into resentment. And Nina, family by blood and proximity, was no better. She wasn't trying to hurt Christina for fun. She was trying to eliminate competition. What's terrifying is that she did it with a smile. She hosted brunches. She gave hugs. She offered help with wedding plans. All while calculating how to slowly dismantle Christina's life. That duplicity teaches us something chilling: not every smile is sincere, and not every enemy is obvious. Sometimes your biggest threat knows your coffee order, your calendar, and your medical history. The second lesson is one of vigilance. Christina could have ignored the signs. Many people would have. She could have blamed stress, chalked up her sickness to bad luck, or written off her suspicions as paranoia. And for a while she did. But the body remembers. The gut doesn't lie. Eventually, she began to trust that whisper inside her, the one that told her the dots were too close together to be coincidence. This is a critical reminder that women, especially, are conditioned to dismiss their instincts in favor of politeness, to question their reality so as not to make others uncomfortable. But instincts are ancient for a reason. When the voice in your head says, "This feels wrong," it's not drama. It's data. It's your body compiling everything you've observed and coded subconsciously. Christina's decision to trust that inner voice is the reason she's still alive. Another lesson? Documentation is protection. When she started keeping records, dates, symptoms, conversations, she wasn't just journaling, she was building armor. The justice system, unfortunately, often asks survivors to prove the invisible. Intentions, sabotage, slow poisoning, these aren't always dramatic or overt. They are slow, insidious, often dismissed. Christina's foresight to create a record made all the difference. It reminds us that if you feel like something is wrong, and you can't yet name it, start writing anyway. Keep the texts. Record the meetings. Back up your files. One day, those details could mean the difference between being believed and being ignored. But perhaps the most profound life lesson of all is what Christina chose to do after the smoke cleared. She could have retreated. She could have become bitter. She could have let the betrayal define her, reduce her into a victim who never trusted again. But instead, she stood taller. She didn't just win back her career, she rebuilt it on her terms. She didn't just expose her enemies, she used the exposure as fuel to step into greater power. And in doing so, she showed that revenge doesn't have to be loud or violent. Sometimes, the best revenge is resilience. Success. Peace. Christina took what was meant to silence her and turned it into a keynote. She took trauma and turned it into leadership. And she taught every person watching that surviving isn't just about escaping the fire, it's about walking out of the flames with a message for everyone still inside. Her story also redefines what strength looks like. It's not just about confrontation. It's about patience. Planning. Resisting the urge to scream until you have the evidence that turns the scream into a statement. Strength is drinking water instead of the coffee, then quietly switching the cups. Strength is standing alone in a room of people who want you gone, and recording everything instead of flinching. Strength is not needing to prove your worth to those who already decided to destroy it. And lastly, there's a lesson in boundaries. Christina didn't try to fix James. She didn't give Nina more chances. Once the truth came out, she made space between herself and their toxicity. Physical space. Legal space. Emotional space. She cut the cord cleanly and left. That's the kind of boundary we all need to practice, not the ones based on guilt or obligation, but the ones based on truth. If someone shows you that your success threatens them more than it inspires them, believe them. If someone proves that they'd rather see you sick than see you shine, walk away and don't look back. In a world where we're taught to be kind, forgiving, accommodating, Christina's story reminds us, you can be kind and still say no. You can forgive and still leave. You can love someone and still protect yourself from them. Because self-preservation is not selfish. It's sacred. So what is the life lesson from Christina's story, in one sentence? Maybe it's this: protect your light. Even when the shadows come from the people standing beside you. And if the day ever comes when the coffee smells wrong, the glances feel rehearsed, and your instincts scream louder than the words being said, listen. Write it down. Gather the truth. Then rise. Because if they underestimated you once, let them watch what happens when you finally stop playing small. You don't owe anyone your silence. You owe yourself your survival.